In July of 2015, Cassidy and Bradley Jones visited the American camp at San Juan National Park. San Juan National Park is a group of islands just north of Whidbey Island, which is just north of Seattle. And here's a close-up of the San Juan Island showing the location of the American camp that we visited. Lynn Hyde was the ranger who told us all about the park and the early settlement that was taking place on the island at that time.
Vancouver Island dips below the 49th parallel, so the Americans were very generous and said that the British could keep Vancouver Island. So that meant that the boundary had to do this dip to go through the straits and go out to the Pacific Ocean. But in the middle of that dip, there's a series of San Juan Islands, and it wasn't clear from the treaty where the boundary was relative to the islands. So the English set up a sheep farm right down here. You can see there's interpretive panels and a flagpole down here. That was a Hudson Bay company. They called it the Bellevue Sheep Farm, and they were farming here for about 6 years. And Americans who had not done well in the California gold mines came up here because they heard there was a gold rush up in British Columbia. So they came up, and on the way they found these islands, and so they started trying to set up little farms to prove that it was really an American island. And when they did that, the British got a little bit pissed off. So that's Park Service lingo, yeah. Right? Pissed off. So about a half a mile in that direction, there was a guy named Cutler who set up a little potato patch. He had an Indian wife. He was an American. And one day, one of these British pigs, it was free range, so the animals could go anywhere they wanted. He got up and he found this guy's potato patch, and he started rooting up all his potatoes. And the guy got so mad that he shot the pig. And it's a big no-no in the West, is shooting somebody else's livestock. So the Hudson Bay Company threatened to arrest this guy and take him off to Victoria, where he'd have to face trial and all this. And all the American squatters that were here, they banded together and they put out a call to the U.S. Army down in Fort Steilacoom, which is down by Tacoma. And the Army sent up 66 men under Captain George Pickett to occupy the island. Well, the British weren't crazy about that. So we'll take a little walk on the redoubt and I'll show you where they built their fortifications, because as soon as the Americans set up the army here, then the Royal Navy followed them in and pointed their guns at them. So this was where ultimately they built the American camp, where the American Army settled in for what was going to be the next 14 years. So things from Fort Bellingham were brought over. And then when the boundary was decided, both the armies moved out and the buildings were all auctioned off. And they ended up all over town. This one was just recently moved from, as you can see, it's been changed an awful lot from what it would have looked like when it was actually here. But that's part of their plan, is to try to restore it to what it would have looked like when it was here in the 1860s. So this is the only building that was not moved and is still in its original place, and it became immediately a farmhouse for some of the Hudson Bay Company people that made American land claims here. Navy ships of war, and they had their guns trained on them up here. They originally, and we'll see it when I'll take you on a loop up along the ridge there. When you look down, the American soldiers originally camped down on the beach, but the ships came in after them, and they felt just slightly vulnerable. So they moved to the other side, which really wasn't any better. And finally, Pickett's superior, Colonel Casey, came up with reinforcements and said, you know, you need to get out of range of the guns. And so they came up here and they started building this redoubt. And you can still see, and you can see it better when we go walking around it, but where the platforms, like this mound that sticks out here, that was a gun emplacement. So they had big guns. From here they could reach the British ships, but it was too far for the British ships' guns to reach them, so it was a much better place. They never finished building it because the head of the army intervened, and between him and the British, they came to an understanding that everybody was just going to have to chill out until the big
really
guys
won a war over a dead pig.
Over a dead pig. Yeah. South Beach, and the other one. And that's where the old town was, where all the prostitutes and the bootleggers was down on the beach, down that rise. The wild, wild west.
Were there many people settled here, homesteaders?
No, they were, at that time they were pretty much just serving the military and the Indians. So pretty good vantage point here.
Paving the road.
They're regrading the road. They've found that there's evidence that they're about to have a big slough there, so they're moving the road up the hill.
Yeah. So we probably don't want to go to South Beach.
Okay, sure.
It gets slowed down there. But you know, the truth is that lighthouse is completely sucked in fog right now. So you can see where the cars are there. That's where Pickett's Lane is, and that would take you all the way to South Beach, or it'll take you back to Cattle Point, which is the road that brought you here.